Mr. House calls the Powerpuff Girls into the penthouse with dire news. Professor Utonium has been abducted. House has tracked his Pip-Boy to a place known as the Sierra Madre, said to be a mysterious and cursed place beneath a blood-red cloud. Blossom leads the way, following the Professor's Pip-Boy signal to the Sierra Madre on a rescue mission, but getting there...
That's not the hard part. It's letting go.
It doesn't take long for the girls to find the professor talking to the face of his captor projected on a fountain that tells him that he has given him an explosive collar to wear and a holorifle he will need to destroy speakers and radios. Normally, Professor Utonium would be forbidden from attacking enemies, but speakers and radios are not enemies that directly attack, like Antler or the Sunset Sarsaparilla bottles, so shooting them with the holorifle will be allowed. What does count as enemies are the ghosts, who the Powerpuff Girls will primarily be fighting. They're a bit trickier compared to other enemies the girls have faced so far, as ghosts get back up and keep fighting until one of their limbs have been destroyed. The professor can also turn on holographic security with the terminals scattered around the villa, which will also destroy ghosts that come into their line of fire. The professor's captor wants him to gather 3 others, the first of which is a Nightkin who is locked in a cell in the villa's police station. The mutant, calling himself Dog, doesn't seem to know how to get out of the cell, but down in the basement is another voice that tells the professor how to get Dog out of the cage.
Knew you would come below the cage, down to where I am. Maybe you saw the letters I scratched on the villa walls. A little farther. Follow my voice. That's it. The one in the cage. Dog. I had to lock him up. He keeps disobeying me. That's me there on the table. The disc. My voice. Can't take any chances, though. You may be some victim who simply stumbled down here. If so, can't let you let Dog out. No, not yet. If you're who I think you are, you came to fetch Dog, use him to drag others here. Now I'll use you, and that Pip-Boy you're wearing. You're smart, clever. The key to Dog's cage is simple. Take my voice to the cage above. Let me speak to the beast inside. Then you and I, we can talk.
Professor plays the audio for Dog.
Dog, back in the cage.
And Dog starts to speak to the professor in another voice, the same voice he heard in the basement. This voice, God, tells the professor his captor's name is Elijah, and that they locked Dog in the cell until Elijah comes to them. They also reveal that the key is hidden on their person in a place where Dog cannot find it. God has accidentally given the professor the means to free Dog, so he uses Elijah's voice recording to awaken Dog and tells them where to find the key, freeing the Nightkin from the cell, who races to the fountain. After evading more traps and the Powerpuff Girls fending off more ghosts, the professor finds the second other captive, a ghoul entertainer named Dean Domino. Domino threatens the professor with a bomb he has hidden in one of the cushions of the seats the professor is sitting down on, but the professor agrees to help Dean Domino get into the casino, having no interest in whatever supposed treasure is inside. Dean runs off to the villa fountain while the professor and the Powerpuff Girls head to the medical district of the villa to find the last captive.
The speakers emit a signal that'll set off your caller if you stay too long. There are damaged speakers and shielded ones. The damaged ones you can destroy at range. Don't get close. You can't switch them off like a radio.
The medical district is the first place where the professor uses the holorifle to destroy the decayed speakers. He still relies on the Powerpuff Girls to deal with the ghosts, and oftentimes the ghosts will either get back up when taken down, or the girls will get stuck somewhere and won't follow the professor or fight the ghosts until the professor leads them over. Once the way is clear, Professor Utonium and the girls head into the clinic and are warned about the holographic security inside.
Picking up an emitter signature. Watch for security holograms. Dangerous. Don't shoot them. Attacking them is useless.
If the holograms attack, the girls will try to fight them, but attacking the holograms is useless. Luckily, the professor can sneak behind the holograms even with his low sneak skill and switch off their emitters. Down in the basement, the professor switches off the power to the clinic, disabling the speakers and allowing him to open the autodock to free Christine, the last of the captives. She cannot talk due to the surgery that was performed on her by the autodock, but the professor doesn't have much trouble understanding her sign language. She, too, is convinced to go to the fountain. The Powerpuff Girls clear the way through the ghosts to get back to the fountain, where Elijah now tasks the professor with getting the other captives to positions that will allow them to start the Gala event, which will open the casino. Of course, this means I have to bring companions other than the Powerpuff Girls with me, and they will fight ghosts alongside them, which you may consider failing the challenge. First, the professor must take Dog to a series of switches with a gate. On the way there, the professor sees Dog eat one of the ghosts and talks to them about it. Through this conversation, the Powerpuff Girls learn from Dog how to take down ghosts without them getting back up. Dog doesn't want to stay at their post, as it reminds them of being back in the prison cell, so the professor uses the recording of God to speak to them. God doesn't want to help Elijah, but relents when the professor bluffs and says he can guide Dog into operating the switches. With the Nightkin in position, the professor goes back to the fountain and picks up Dean Domino. Unfortunately, Dean has a gun and is not shy about shooting the ghosts with it. Again, this can be considered a failure of the challenge, as only the Powerpuff Girls are supposed to attack enemies, and bringing Mr. Yesterday to his post at Cuesta del Sol is mandatory. Along the way, Professor Utonium turns on some of the holograms, which will protect Dean from the ghosts while he does his part at triggering the Gala event. This convinces Dean to stay and do as asked of him, leaving the professor to pick up Christine. The professor talks a bit more to Christine, learning that she originally came to the Sierra Madre to hunt down Elijah on orders from the Brotherhood of Steel. Her reason for hunting him was more personal than that, though, as Elijah had separated her from her lover just because they were both female. Christine needs to be brought to a switching station in Cuesta del Sol, but as soon as they enter, the professor can't help but notice how scared she looks of the place. The professor destroys some more speakers of the holorifle and shuts down security systems using the terminals, and the Powerpuff Girls destroy the one turret in the area. The professor even clears out some of the toxic cloud, but even with all that, Christine doesn't want to use the elevator. The professor deduces that being in the elevator would trigger Christine's traumatic experience of being trapped in the autodock he found her in, so he reprograms one of the nearby computers for Christine to use instead. She looks to be grateful and even cordial with the professor after this, so he leaves her to do her task and heads for the bell tower in Salida del Sol, where the professor must throw the last switch. The twisted halls and corridors of Salida del Sol are quite confusing to the girls, and the professor gets separated from them quite often while trying to slip past the ghosts to get into the tower, but eventually the professor makes it there and triggers the Gala event to start. Now it's just a matter of making it back to the Villa Fountain and entering the casino, but the ghosts are out in full force, and the Powerpuff Girls keep getting lost wandering around in the villa. Eventually, I just make a run for it past the indestructible speakers and the ghosts to get inside the Sierra Madre. The Powerpuff Girls catch up on their own, of course, just in time to see the Professor, Dog, Christine, and Dean Domino get knocked out by the casino's security system. The casino security takes the other guests to different parts of the casino, but the girls stay behind and protect the professor from the security so that when he comes to, he's still at the entrance to the Sierra Madre casino. And this actually works in Elijah's favor, because now the professor must go through the casino and find the other captives and deal with them. First, power to the casino needs to be switched on. The professor heads into the main gambling hall to do this, but it is guarded by more holographic security and some speakers and radios to destroy and switch off in the areas. Luckily, the professor can use the terminals to change the hologram's patrol routes and switch off their emitters when found. Sneaking past the patrolling hologram, the professor switches off its emitter and flips the switch to restore power to the casino. The holograms change from trigger-happy security guards to friendly cashiers and dealers. By trading pre-war money to the cashier, the professor gets some more Sierra Madre chips and wins some more playing blackjack with his 9 in luck. The Powerpuff Girls end up pulling the professor away from the blackjack table despite his hot streak, reminding him he's still wearing a necklace that's rigged to explode, and they came here to rescue him, not watch him gamble. So the professor heads into the restaurant. There's big trouble in there as Dog is having a manic episode. They've locked themselves in the kitchen and released the gas valves in the hopes of starting a huge fiery explosion in an attempt to finally kill the voice of God in their head. Grabbing the emergency maintenance key, the professor heads back through the casino to the locked door to the kitchen. Quickly, the professor talks to Dog in an attempt to calm them down. God orders Dog to attack the professor, but because the professor was so nice to Dog before, Dog listens when the professor tells them to listen to Master. Using some psychology, the professor convinces Dog to look inward at the voice of God. The two realize they are one and the same and come together. The new mutant personality, who is neither God nor Dog, is confused as to who they are, how they got into the kitchen of some casino in the middle of a toxic villa, and why their body is so cut up, but a part of them knows the professor had saved them somehow, and is grateful. Leaving the Nightkin to rest and recover from their wounds in the kitchen, Professor Utonium leaves the kitchen and heads back into the lobby, where a few ghosts from the villa have broken in. For some reason, the Powerpuff Girls don't run out and attack them, so eventually I just have the professor run past the ghosts into the theater. After destroying another speaker with the holorifle, the professor finds the key to get backstage and Dean Domino, who is glad to see the professor and the Powerpuff Girls are here to save him. Turns out more holographic security and more radios and speakers have trapped him backstage. The professor disables an emitter and heads backstage, destroying the speakers and switching off the radios, while also finding a key and a copy of Dean Domino's song Saw Her Yesterday on holotape. Playing the holotape shuts off the security system and allows the professor and the girls to rescue Dean Domino, who talks to the professor through the door before it opens about who Vera Keyes really was. There are still more ghosts wandering the lobby, so the professor runs past them into the suites, where he hears the panicking voice of Vera Keyes herself calling out to Frederick Sinclair for help. He also hears a calmer version of Vera over the intercom, who reveals herself to be Christine. After slipping past the radios and the hostile Vera holograms, the professor talks to Christine, revealing to her that the autodock in Vera's room didn't just restore her voice, it gave her the voice of Vera Keyes. Her voice is the one that must speak the passphrase to open the way to the Sierra Madre's vault, but first the professor must find the passphrase. Heading back into the lobby, the professor runs to the receptionist terminal and turns on the holographic security. The Powerpuff Girls and the Vera hologram make short work of the ghosts in the lobby, and the professor finds the passphrase. Begin again, but know when to let go. The professor returns to Vera's room and tells Christine what the passphrase is. He convinces her that his girls can defeat Elijah, and that she should simply find somewhere safe. Christine is hesitant, but agrees to this plan and speaks the passphrase to open the vault for him and the Powerpuff Girls.
Begin again, but know when to let go.
Until the professor reaches the Sierra Madre vault, the Powerpuff Girls cannot really help him down here, as there are no enemies other than the holograms, which cannot be attacked anyway. Using his scientific know-how and the holorifle, the professor slips past the vault's security system and shuts it down. Blossom and Buttercup meet him in front of the entrance to the vault, while Bubbles is still wandering around somewhere. As soon as the professor enters the vault, the door seals shut behind him, and the turrets outside start to shoot at Blossom and Buttercup, who return fire while the professor accesses the terminals inside. Elijah tells the professor to wait in the vault until he has made absolutely sure security won't trap him, but the professor warns Elijah that as a scientist, he knows exactly how to make it so that Elijah would never get what he wants out of the vault. This convinces Elijah to come down the elevator to the vault. Blossom and Buttercup are still fighting some of the turrets outside the vault when Elijah arrives, but Christine shuts them down from wherever she is. This lets Blossom and Buttercup redirect their attack onto Elijah himself, and he goes down quickly. Now it's just a mad dash to escape the vault before it explodes, or the professor's collar does. He lets Bubbles know to retreat back to the elevator and races back there himself. Once outside, with Elijah gone, the professor has no trouble disarming and removing the bomb collar before returning to the Mojave with the Powerpuff Girls. Returning to Elijah's bunker, Professor destroys the trap that got him kidnapped in the first place and checks Elijah's terminals. Turns out he was a former Brotherhood of Steel elder, and there's a message on his terminal for someone called Veronica. The professor tracks down Veronica to give her the message from Elijah, but she recognizes him as the one who destroyed the Brotherhood of Steel with the Powerpuff Girls. Veronica attacks, and Bubbles has no choice but to put her down. With the Sierra Madre's vault destroyed and the remains of the Brotherhood of Steel in the Mojave dealt with, the day is saved, and I beat dead money thanks to the Powerpuff Girls.